You're listening to WorkWire, sponsored by Career Club and SHRM. Career Club has a range of services aimed at job seekers with an empathetic approach. Whether you are a job seeker yourself, know someone who is in job search, or an HR professional looking to bring a more empathetic approach to transitioning employees, check out career.club. If you are an HR professional seeking to enhance your skills, subscribe to SHRM and explore their extensive resources. Visit shrm.org. That's shrm.org.
Hello, everybody. I am Bob Goodwin, joined by my good friend Johnny C. Taylor Jr. Johnny, how are you?
I'm doing really well. How are you today?
I'm doing fine. The president and CEO of SHRM has been all over the map here recently. Where have your travels taken you?
Literally, it won't stop. All the way to India for the B20, back to San Francisco, and like literally this is in a week, back to San Francisco for the CEO Academy, and then we had a Visionaries Conference yesterday in DC. So, and then I'll be on a flight this afternoon to Charlotte. It just never stops.
Okay. Well, let's make good use of your time, good use of our listeners' time. Our topic today is going to be something that we have talked about offline a lot, which is the notion of education.
Yes.
And, when we were talking about putting together the WorkWire and kind of coming up with titles, one of the things that I wanted to do was, on the other hand, because it's kind of fun to walk around these issues. And so today's topic on education is really interesting because I think it's one that lends itself to there's more than one perspective. This is a much more nuanced issue than just kind of what the headlines might say.
That's right.
So what I thought we could do is let me just go ahead and read a little bit of some highlights of an article that we looked at in the New York Times recently, and then we can pick the thread up with there. Is that cool?
Perfect.
Awesome. So the topic is education. Do degrees matter anymore? So just some nuggets here. 14 states, including 10 in the past year alone, have dropped degree requirements for many state jobs. And the trend's gathering steam at many high-profile businesses. We think about companies like IBM and Accenture. And all this comes as college enrollment has dropped. I was reading a statistic the other day that there's 4 million fewer teenagers in four-year colleges than there were 5 years ago. It's like, wow. Then, so the argument, and one that we've talked about before, is many talented people, including disadvantaged minorities, may possess the skills needed for many white-collar roles without holding the formal credentials listed as prerequisites. So we're starting to get to another side of the topic here. But in recent years, though, a typical college graduate earned a median wage premium of more than $30,000, or almost 75% more than those who had just completed high school. Right. That's wild. And then SHRM, which cite a couple SHRM data points here, and then I'll let you go. Major study that you guys did found that 71% of executives said that some alternative credentials are equivalent to a bachelor's degree, but only 58% of supervisors, usually below the executives in the org chart, concurred, and that figure fell to 36% with human resource professionals. And another thing that you guys did, hiring managers and HR pros evaluated hypothetical job applicants with traditional degrees more highly than those with alternative credentials, particularly when the job ad used strict degree requirements. This was even the case when the latter were viewed as more likely to have the technical skills needed for the job. So on the one hand, we've got education still has a positive ROI. You're making $30,000, 75% more. But at the same time, the trend with skills-based is, hey, do you really need that college degree? What do you think?
Yeah, like this is, you like to pick thorny issues, right? And you're right. On the WorkWire, that's what we intentionally attack. So the answer is both. It's both and. In some ways, the data doesn't lie, right? We know that people say, like that you don't need a degree for something, but when they get the opportunity to choose between hiring someone who has a degree and someone who does not have a degree, you lose out most of the time. Mm-hmm. Has that gotten better over time? Sure. I mean, we're in a moment now, in part, Bob, I think, because we had such low unemployment rates for so long, and people could literally pick the jobs they wanted, that we didn't have the luxury of being exclusive. And, that's really what happened is 2018, 19, the market was on fire, 2021, even up through 2022. And employers were like, listen, requiring a bachelor's degree, is going to cost you a lot more, right? You just talked about the 30% premium. But the big question is they're just not available, right? There's a limited number of talent, and it's about to get worse. If we only have 4 million people in college right now, then the premium either goes up or employers conversely decide maybe I don't have to pay. I don't need that degree. I just need the job done. So I see the market has really driven this new trend of not really requiring a degree, especially for white collar jobs. The other side of it, though, is there are some real advantages to having a college degree. This idea that it's simply no difference between someone who's gone to college and completed a degree in a white collar job and a person who hasn't is actually overly simplified. There's a lot more, as you know, having attended college, that you learn outside of the classroom. There's a socialization practice. You can train someone to do most jobs, but things like thinking, critical thinking, some of that comes out of college. Being exposed to different ways of solving problems, that's a lot of what you get too in the rigor of a really good, solid undergraduate education. And over time, I can't wait until we get the research, but I think you begin to see generally, and there are always exceptions, right? There are all sorts of really incredibly smart people who didn't go to college and who become successful. But guess what? Those are small numbers. They're not by any, that's not the truth. If that's what you're going to hang your hat on is, that's this one person I know. Listen, I worked for 3 billionaires in my career, as you know, Wayne Huizenga, Sumner Redstone, Barry Diller. 2 of them didn't attend college or didn't have college degrees, right? So I know it can be done. The odds aren't as good.
Yeah. So you talked about some of the kind of collateral benefits of going to college, and as you've talked before, the pandemic kind of blew that part up too. So you lost the socialization piece of this. I mean, you're very key inflection point of really going from a child to an adult and being with your peers and kind of growing up together, working on things in a collaborative group environment, right? And then all that kind of went away for 3 years. And so it's sort of like the worst of both worlds. Right. You've got the expense of college without a lot of the benefit of college. But I want to talk about, there's studies out there and you can kind of find your favorite number, but the point being that fully 1/3 of recent college graduates minimally are in roles that don't even require a degree. They are massively underemployed in a role. Like they're, again, I want to be dismissive, but they're a barista or whatever it is that they're doing that actually doesn't even require a college degree. Yet tuition inflation is outpacing consumer inflation 5 to 1. Right. And so you've got this massive expense, the debt that goes with it, and the payoff for a lot of people is dubious.
Well, depending upon what I love that. They're really 2 different issues. So the cost and then related to payoff. It depends upon what period of time you're judging. You're right. Right out of school, you may be working as a barista at one of the coffee shops. Got it. Over time, does that turn into the store manager, the district manager, the chief operating officer, and the CEO? Well, your chances of getting to that CEO suite with a 4-year degree are significantly better than without one. So the payoff can't be seen in terms of short term. I finished college, I have a job, and the job doesn't necessarily require a degree. I think that's not the best way to think about it. Is over time, and we know this for sure, that over 10, 20, 30-year periods, over one's career, there is absolutely a significant return for those who have college degrees versus those who don't. Now, separately, we can question why. Is that the bias of hiring managers, etc.? Yes, all of that's true, but all of those things are true. So I think that's number one. I would not I try to steer people away from the conversation that says, oh, I have a friend who just finished college and she's working at retail. Yeah, and one day she may be the CEO of that retailer. And that's what the college degree is likely to give her. That's the premium. Cost of tuition. Let me just say this is a different. And the market is responding to that. We are seeing schools price themselves back into reality. Part of the issue is you give people unlimited loan access, parent plus loans, et cetera, when people are willing to pay. And this is really something that we don't talk about. My daughter, I have a 13-year-old daughter right now. She's in private school. Hell, there are a lot of us spending $30,000, $35,000 a year for K through 12. Mm-hmm. So that has allowed colleges. A lot of us are kind of numb to the idea of having to pay $50,000 for a college degree per year to go to college because we're paying $35,000 for elementary school. Mm-hmm. And in some cities, Washington, D.C., there are schools here that are charging $55,000, almost $60,000 a year for K through 12. So there's a lot. It's not just the price of higher education. It's the entire PK through 12 system and the costs associated with it. And that's something.
Well, there was an article. That's a good point. There was an article in the Wall Street Journal last week, I think that it was, as we're recording this. And it was basically talking about the lack of board oversight with university spending. And,
that's
they're opening up, a thing in Europe, and they're building a bunch of new dorms, and there's supposed to be this massive influx of students who didn't come. And so they're like hundreds of millions of dollars deep into just, like I said, unfettered building plans, kind of expansion plans. And now all of a sudden it's like, oh crap, we don't have the financial discipline, and we've got either it's our endowment is getting dwindled down, or just our operating budgets cannot support how much debt we took on to build all this stuff. And then they just straight pass it on to college students, to the enrollment, and the enrollment's going, time out, man. Like, I don't want to pay for that. I'm out.
No. And listen, this is their fault. The funny thing about, college enrollment is you can predict it. You can predict it 2 decades prior. You know how many people were born, right? You just know this. That's the fact. In the U.S., we knew largely, you have death rates and growth, but at the end of the day, we had an idea of what we knew. I was in higher ed, you remember. I was at the Thurgood Marshall College Fund for almost 8 years. And the fact of the matter is we saw this coming. And to your point, despite that, colleges and universities poured tons of dollars into new facilities, into dorm rooms that will compete with some moderately priced hotels these days.
Yes.
And we were doing all of this in the face of the data telling us and the numbers telling us that we were going to have a shortage of consumers. Mm-hmm. And here we are.
How much of this argument this topic that we're discussing is really kind of a false binary choice here? It seems to me that a lot of this is yes, are people rightfully questioning the value proposition of college, as you should. It is really, really expensive, and you ought to know what you're getting for it. But it seems that, do you need a degree to get a good paying job is a different question, because what we're also talking about is expanding the talent pool. So it's not this zero-sum game of just this fixed piece of the pie. It's actually growing the pie of talent.
And even the question, Bob, do you need a degree? The answer is no. If you want to know that, that's an easy one.
This episode is over.
All right. But it's so binary. This is a nuanced series of, a way of thinking and challenges that we're trying to solve for, questions that we're trying to answer. But I agree. There's so many ways, which is why I love that we're breaking this down. So let's start with one. Do you need a degree? No. Will that degree return be a solid, you get a great return of it on your investment of time and money? And by the way, there are 2 factors here, not just one. It's not just the cost of the degree, it's the time that you're in that we have to factor in. The answer is yes, over time. Over time, it's not going to be immediate necessary, from a return standpoint. And then the question is, and I think it's right, how can we be better consumers? Here's something I know from having run a college fund. I oversaw an institution that had 47 member universities. And the consumer got a little reckless too. So in this equation, you're blaming the schools for charging. but the schools can't charge what a customer won't pay.
Right.
And the customers were demanding, as I said, these wonderful facilities, and forget, average food. They wanted high-end food. They complained about the quality of the dorms. They complained that there were not enough activities on campus. We wanted branded food. So it wasn't okay just to have a cup of coffee. It needed to be Starbucks. Like, all of this was also driven by consumer demand. Okay. So then the consumer comes out and says, I spent $50,000 a year for that. I say, yeah, but you asked for a $50,000 a year experience too. And so what I've been saying, and I'm really pushing, and universities are now employers are starting to say, we still want you to have a degree or significant training and alternative skills, and there are different pathways for different people in different roles, but we want you to be smarter consumers. Why not attend the community college in your neighborhood? Why not attend the great state school in your state versus the high-end private school? Both of you can come out with a degree, but one can be $150,000 in debt and one can be zero debt. That's the new discussion.
Yeah. Can we talk curriculum for a minute?
Yes.
So I'm going to pay the money to go to a four-year college. Yes. There has, and obviously this massively differs by degree type in what you're studying. Yes. But in a previous episode of the WorkWire, we had kind of talked about the lack of preparedness that employers feel. Their new hires coming out of school are exhibiting. They're just not ready in the employer's perspective to be in a corporate work environment. So how much of this is like, we need to be teaching more job skills, job ready skills in college versus kind of this very historical, air quote, classical education model?
I think it's a balance. I mean, there is value to teaching people how to learn and how to think and how to solve problems. And that's not skills per se in the direct sense, like the technical capability to do a particular job. What you're saying is we need both. You also need to be able to do something with that degree. So that's where the vocational part of it, which many in higher ed kind of poo-poo. I'm not in the business of doing this. I remember talking to a professor who says, it's not my job to prepare you to get a job. I'm like, well, sort of kind of is, but they don't, many of them didn't think that way. I think most right-thinking institutions have said, we've got to get the balance right. The person needs to have the skills necessary to do a job. You can be the most brilliant person in the world coming out of school right now, but if you don't know AI, how it works, what it can do, if you don't know how to use the tools now this modern day economy requires, then you're going to be disadvantaged. And so I think higher ed is responding to that, but for a while, at least 2 or 3 decades, that was not the discussion. And that's problematic because, again, you finish school without skills and employers don't hire you. And that is actually mostly why you went to school, was to get a good job.
I guarantee you that's what mommy and daddy think. Having put 4 kids through college, which actually kind of leads to another point. At Career Club, what we're doing is helping people find a career that matters to them. One of the areas that I looked at pretty heavily in starting Career Club was colleges and universities. They're putting millions of people into the labor market every year. Do they actually know how to present themselves, find a job that's suitable for them, interview well, all the kind of things that you need to actually go secure a job? So I would argue that some part of the reason that people are underemployed is a lack of skills of identifying and securing a role that actually your degree would be appropriate for. What was super disappointing to me, I'm going to make a broad statement here, is that most of the institutions that I spoke to, their career office, highly underfunded, highly understaffed. And so they did not have, to your point about like, hey, isn't the point here to help me go get a job? And yet when you look at where they've allocated budget dollars, that ain't it.
And that's the problem, Bob. That's what I was getting at. That's the problem is for a long time, schools didn't think that was their job.
Right.
I mean, that's just fact. And that evidence of that is you put very minimal resources into your career planning and placement office. instead in dorms and football teams in this and that. So yeah, that's what you did and you can follow what someone values or what they think value is by where they put their money. And universities for a long time put their money in everywhere but getting people ready for jobs. And that's not just in things like a career planning and placement office, but it also applies to what did you teach? So if you look at the curriculum, to your point, did you teach courses that would prepare the kids for a job? As well as learning how to solve the world and making the world a better place and making us a better society. We didn't do that for a long time, and so here we are.
Let's pivot a little bit, because this has all been about colleges, white-collar jobs. There's a whole giant chunk of the labor market. Number I read earlier was 30 million people are in roles that don't require. So talking about trades, vocational jobs, plumbers, electricians, construction, the guy that fixes our refrigerator or whatever, like those are the average comp on that's $55,000. Those are not bad jobs. And the aging out, just super quick, because this is going to get into, and I'm going to say it the way that I think you like it, inclusion, equity, diversity. It plays into this, which is that the average age of a tradesman is 43 years old. He's white, and 96% of people engaged in trades broadly are men. Only 4% are women. 2/3 of them are white. So there's this other kind of massive greenfield for inclusion, equity, and diversity to go have careers that matter to them, doing work that needs to get done, and making a damn good living at it.
And, gosh, this is a whole conversation. It's one that I feel really passionate about. So thanks for bringing it up. For so long, an aspiring population, a group that had been historically not allowed into college, made its goal in life to get all of its kids into college. And so what we've done is the United Negro College Fund, UNCF, has a line that a mind is a terrible thing to waste. Mm-hmm. And iconic tagline. Implicit in that is that if you don't go to college, you wasted your mind.
Yeah.
So think about that. We've been almost, no matter what your real skills were, you may have been a brilliant plumber and could make a hell of a much more significant living than you can do with a white collar job. But in your family, in your community, everywhere, you were encouraged, in fact, shamed into going to college. So again, this is what we've now created as a situation where we have people who have been actually, and there's this system that has actually encouraged people to go to college no matter what. The beautiful thing is what employers are now saying, back to really the point of this discussion, is we're saying you don't have to go to college, especially to enter our workforce. Maybe over time, you go back and continue pursuing a college degree. There are more articles about people who get them in later in life, or that you get a stackable set of credentials that keep you fresh and relevant for the then job market. But this notion that, you mentioned it, women, aren't participating in trades. African Americans, Latino, et cetera, are not in meaningful numbers. That's the community's challenge, not corporate America's challenge directly.
Yeah, but just because we're talking about all things work, right, and just to not be myopic about, hey, you don't have to have a white collar job to work. One, right, and that there is a lot of work that needs to be done, and that as this part of the population ages out, it's a really good lane to go be backfilled with women, Black, Latino, as you say, like underrepresented groups in what's really, a good opportunity for a lot of people. You talked about schools, and not only is it geared towards sending you to college, you have failed. There's even kind of a shame quality of, sorry, you weren't good enough, you weren't smart enough, and so you didn't go to college. You lost the game, and you're 18 years old.
And there, you cannot underestimate and understate the significance of, I was just recently at a high school graduation event, and as a part of the commencement graduation ceremony, the superintendent of schools said, would all of you who are going off to college please stand up? And he pointed out the people who had gotten this much in scholarships and who was going to Harvard and who was going to that. Do you not think, again, this started way before higher ed and it's way before employers.
Exactly.
You literally have said to the rest of the people who didn't stand, you've shamed them. That's what you've done. And so some of those people who weren't planning to go into college were like, you know what, I think I better go, even though I don't want to go, even though I have another job that I can get. They're like, the principal said, my teacher, the whole system said, I need to go to college. We've got to think about the cues that we're sending way before we get to the workplace. So it's interesting you talked about the stat that SHRM did, which talked about what HR managers actually talk, the bias, 30% or so of HR managers, what they think about not having a college degree. And I think, again, as much as you say you don't need a college degree, how many children do you have, Bob?
4.
Have any of them not gone to college?
No, sir.
Okay. So that's the moment. We got it. Like, we talk about it, but wink, wink. And you and I've discussed it. We spend a lot of money. My kid went to Georgetown. I got another one who I'm preparing for right now to go to college. And secretly, wouldn't I be a little disappointed if she didn't get a college degree? Probably.
Yeah.
You?
So let's start to put a bow on this. This is not either or. College isn't for everybody, but if you're thinking about going to college, that the reality is over time, as you say, there is a positive ROI. And it may not be in the short term, but it's definitely laying a foundation for you to be more upwardly mobile than if you don't. And then you made a good point that I want to just revisit very quickly. And this is going to bleed into another WorkWire topic around basically continuous learning and learning how to learn.
That's right.
Learning how to learn, because upskilling, reskilling is not going away. And like I said, we'll talk about it in a future episode. But learning how to learn and finding joy in education, finding a topic that you're genuinely interested in and want to continue to learn about and in fact, advance the knowledge in your field. That's very satisfying.
One thing as we close, one thing in addition to everything that you said, we've got to convince both employers and employees to be better consumers of higher education. If you're going to go, think long and hard about taking on significant amounts of debt. Think long and hard about spending, whether it's debt or out of your own dollars, $70, $80, $90,000 a year for a college degree per year, because then it becomes a lot more difficult over time to prove that there was an ROI on it. You have to be a much smarter consumer of higher ed.
Well said. So let's go ahead and start to wrap up this episode. Johnny, as always, it's fun exploring complicated issues with you and kind of looking at more than one side of something. I want to thank all of our viewers and listeners. If you're watching this on YouTube, please like, subscribe, comment. If you're listening to this on a podcast, please review it and rate it. That really does help. So in the meantime, Johnny, great seeing you. Thank you so much for your wisdom. And we'll see you next time on the WorkWire.
Check out career.club for personalized help with your job search. Visit SHRM.org to become part of the largest human resources organization worldwide.